I would say is that there are a lot of scholars who are interested in Treme because of its status in terms of how television has the power to say something about social issues in society, and in particular the relationship between Treme and Katrina, right, and the traumatized society or the post-crisis society. So the kinds of questions that they would be interested in is, it's always been noted since the 1950s that television has the power to bring the outside world into your living room, right? It has the power to bring the world to your couch. That's something called mobile privatization, private mobilization. Private mobilization that brings, things into your private sphere. So no series had done that about New Orleans since Frank's Place. And Frank's Place was another series just like Treme, where there are books written about Frank's Place. Scholars were very, very excited about this, that this was going to show what's real and authentically going on in one of the most interesting cities in the United States and bring it into people's living rooms. And how are people going to deal with that? And so there are two kinds of ways that I've seen scholars answer that question about TV and society. And one is that Treme does a great job of bringing an authentic sense of New Orleans culture to people who were displaced after Katrina. That for people who are missing New Orleans, people who are missing New Orleans, who are from New Orleans or familiar with New Orleans, that it brought them a sense of being connected. The accents were spot on, the details were spot on. If you're, I've seen this when I've gone to public screenings here, that people take great pleasure in identifying all the little bits and pieces that belong to, a New Orleans culture, right? People I've talked to who are excited about the program really love that. So that's, so scholars have interpreted that's actually a lifeline for people who are displaced and feel dislocated from New Orleans to feel connected. On the other side of that coin is that people see that this authentic culture fits very neatly with the kind of tourist economy that New Orleans is trying to be. So while it's providing a sense of connection for people who know New Orleans, it's also a running tourist ad for people who don't know New Orleans to come and see what you're going to get here, right? And this is the neighborhood, and this is the clubs, and the fact that you have actual real figures, real celebrity chefs, real musicians, real, tourist guides, real people who you might meet as a tourist here or might try to go see, is another way that the world is being brought into your living room, right, for your consumption. And that kind of connects to the last kind of thread that I was going to say about how people write about Treme. And scholars have focused on Treme as an allegory for what's called runaway film production. Runaway meaning when Hollywood Capital runs away from Hollywood to shoot on location in different cities across the country. In Vancouver, Canada was actually the forerunner before New Orleans. Now in Ireland and Argentina and any country or place, there is a race to the bottom to offer the most incentives to bring production there. And you know, the people who've written about this talk about New Orleans as a kind of a prototypical neoliberal city. It's a city where, you know, the city is made more and more responsible through local tax dollars, through individual entrepreneurship to raise money, right? And more, you feel this, right? As being put on your back to do that the city or the federal government used to take care of, right? The newest thing is, right, we have to take care of our own sidewalks because we can't expect the city to fix them for us, right? Or we have to do, you know, people go out and fix their own potholes, or, you know, things like this. Healthcare is another example of this. And Treme is very interesting because, you know, Treme advertises constantly a lot of local entrepreneurship, right? The chef who's displaced, who goes to Bacchanal, who, you know, basically bootstraps her own restaurant, then becomes, you know, she's going to run a famous restaurant, or she goes to New York and now she's going to come back and run a famous restaurant. So you see kind of training for how to be a good citizen in a city, kind of the prototypical city where you can't count on the city to do anything for you. Housing, labor, healthcare, education, right? So you see all this kind of entrepreneurial activity being modeled on Treme itself. So many people associated with Treme are celebrity philanthropists, right? Wendell Pierce and the Gentilly neighborhood, what's the neighborhood? Pontchartrain Park. You have the Musician Coalition, you have Musicians Village. You know, folks on Treme are friends with Brad Pitt and the Make It Right Foundation. So you see, again, this tendency with Treme to, for individuals to shoulder the things we used to expect government to shoulder. And on one hand, you know, you also hear there's a positive side. A lot of people are getting jobs on the program. Musicians in particular, it's a phenomenal outlet for certain musicians to become more self-sufficient and sustaining and grow their business. On the other hand, you have to ask yourself, what about all the people who participate in culture that are not featured on Treme or do not make profit? Right? What about all the cultural production that happens that's not profitable? And when you put all your when you put so much emphasis on kinds of culture making that are profitable, then, you know, one of the things that scholars have asked are, what does that turn our culture into, right? What happens to our definition of what's worthwhile culture?